Awesome. Welcome to the Nerds and Friends podcast. My name is Josh Lindquist. My co-host Carey DuVal is joining us here to interview Ethan Mawyer. We're very happy to have you on the podcast, sir.
Hi, thank you. It's actually Mawyer.
Mawyer, thank you for
hard for
correcting
everyone
us.
to pronounce.
Moyer like lawyer.
Yes, lawyer with an M. That's exactly
Lawyer
it.
with an M.
I didn't want to say it specifically like the way New York people say lawyer, but if that's the way it's pronounced, because
Sorry,
that.
hold on a second. I have a phone call. May be important, may not be.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll pause.
We will
recording.
talk in the meantime. You're good. Well, today we're going to talk about books and writing, as we typically tend to do.
Mhm.
Carey, what are just to recap our last podcast? We had a great talk about revisions of the writing process, and it's been helping me think a lot about character arcs and really hitting home the anchors of your character's story, of
Mhm.
where you want them to start and where you want them to end. I just think that was really cool that you helped me visualize that along with Will in our last episode. That was great.
Well, I can appreciate that, and I think that I think that we might be able to get our guest to give his perspective, lend his perspective on that. So,
I'm excited.
Mr. Moyer, tell us about what you're currently writing and what you're here to talk about.
I'm here. I hadn't actually been sure exactly what I was here to talk about, but now I'm finding out. I am currently working on a sequel, a sort of a sequel to both the books I have out. It's more of a direct sequel to the book I cannot show you the cover of.
Fantastic. Well, what's your book about, or at least what's the genre? What kind of thing do you like to write?
It's generally in the speculative comedy, if that makes any sense.
Speculative comedy. Okay.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that.
Or comic speculative fiction is probably the more accurate description of the genre.
Very cool.
All right. Like Jules Verne, Isaac Asimov kind of speculative, or
No, just like sci-fi fantasy.
I dig it. Okay, that's very interesting. So what? Well, actually, let's just pitch the question that Josh was talking about a second ago. How do you decide who the main character of a story is, and how do you discover their arc over the course of your writing?
It sometimes takes a while.
Mhm.
Like for I don't know if you can. I always have trouble showing it. This book,
Oh, hey.
it's kind
Yep.
of fading into space.
We can see part of it.
You can see part of it. Good. Some of it's fading into space. Here, I think I heard you put a clue. No, far works.
Yep.
Space is a challenge.
There are
yeah,
people on the cover. We can see that.
Mhm.
Yes, the people, not humans, but people. And the character who ended up becoming the narrator was not going to be the main character when I first came up with the very, very bare bones start of the story.
Interesting. What made that character a good narrator when you ended up settling on them as the framing device for your story?
I don't even remember for sure because it was something like 2014 when I started writing this version of the story.
Mhm.
That the one with an actual plot, because it didn't have a plot for like 8 years.
Okay.
Then it was just like three half human, half dragons who were kind of like wandering around communities,
Mm-hmm.
which, as you might guess, didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, very, very kind of serialized.
Right. It would have been very surreal if I had like more of a established settings.
Mm-hmm.
But I ended up when I finally came up with the premise, which is about like it's basically an evil god steals a music supply. He tricks everyone into selling off all their like, music files, so he controls all like the hard copies, and that's all there is.
Interesting.
And this one character is like super cynical, and had always been super cynical since I created him. And he's the only one who does not fall for this trap and does not sell his hard copies. So he has his hard copies and has to go on a quest to like get these hard copies somewhere where they can be copied and spread out.
Mhm.
That's
So
a
the
really
other,
cool
that's
narrative. I
probably
like
why
that.
he ended up becoming the main character, because he is the one who would have had this music.
That's a really interesting way to like both to frame a story and uh to give a different perspective on something, because I take it this is kind of is this a first person
It is a
narrative?
first person narrative.
Okay, so
It had actually started out as a third person. I was advised to like switch it to first person to kind of like narrow in the focus.
mhm. I've
So it's not as all over the place.
I adore either kind of those books. Like they are a really good first person book is a really interesting story to read always, because you get so much
Right.
internal dialogue and depth out of that. Actually, when talking about a cynical narrator,
Yeah.
I was curious. I'm a little curious about that because I think of the way they decided to do the Doom Squad television show, where the first season is narrated by the villain.
Huh.
And I
Okay.
wanted to know what kind of like perspective that led to it, with your main character being kind of, if you're cynical, you're more like, this doesn't fucking matter, in kind of a way.
Well, pretty much. He did not want. He was kind of forced onto this whole journey. He did not want to do it.
Hmm,
It was just kind of like they made him because he was the only one who could.
interesting.
That's really fun to
Like-
have him thrust into this quest, reluctantly,
Yeah,
and have him
it is a
going
reluctant
along.
hero story.
That's awesome. I wanted to ask for your main character, if they went on a road trip with the main character of the last TV show you watched, who would that be and how would it go?
I haven't been watching a lot of TV. I'm trying to figure out what the last TV show I watched.
Was it Sleepy Hollow?
It was not. I have not seen Sleepy Hollow.
Oh, well, okay.
Really have not been watching much. I have not been watching much TV.
It
At
could be
least
the last
not
book you read
scripted.
as well.
It's true.
Last what?
Last book you read, maybe.
Hey, the last book, the book I'm reading now.
Sure.
Okay.
Whichever tickles your fancy.
Right. The book I'm reading now, if we went on a road trip with her. That's a he would have a tough time not setting fire to her phone, because her friends would be calling her all the time, like trying to find out what's going on with her being on, like what's it like being on a road trip with a half dragon.
There you go.
And he
I would
has a
be
thing
curious
about
as
phones
well.
where he doesn't like them.
Oh, he doesn't like phones?
He does not like them.
I like the concept of a cynical character here, and I do like the what sounds like an interesting mashup of the fantasy and the sci-fi elements with hard copies of music and the characters being half dragon. I was wondering, how did you come upon the setting that you came up with, or what, or can you describe the setting and how it's unique? Because it sounds fairly unique from just the different story elements.
Well, I think like I started coming up with it when I was in college. I think I just want to kind of play off like the basic like Tolkien setting, like the
Mhm.
basic fantasy adventure setting. But then I can't even do it. And I've read basically every Discworld book, and that probably influenced my setting a little bit too.
All right, yeah. Who doesn't love a good Terry Pratchett, like
Yeah, no,
absurdist
a lot
fantasy?
of people aren't aware, and it's a shame. But
Mhm. Well, they should, because the
You should.
mass market paperbacks take like just a few hours to read each.
I
And
have, I think I read one in like my first reading was in 4 hours. I think I got it and finished it the same night.
Yeah, exactly, because they're brilliantly pulpy. They're amazingly layered. They're like the language in them is fantastic.
Right, you
because
can read it fast, you can read it slow.
you can read with as much depth as you want. If it's one of those, and one of the cool things is there's, at least in the early ones, there's not like really chapters. Like,
Oh no,
there's-
there are very few that have chapters. It's only only the one I can't even pronounce his name, like the moist ones, moist von Lipwig.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
those are really only one the chapters and the children's books. That's it.
Yeah, and the
So you can just
interesting.
read wherever you want, stop wherever you want.
Yeah, and just as long as you got a bookmark, you're good.
And I always just I don't for some reason I don't do bookmarks for the most part.
Good for you.
But I think there's something about his stories where I just remember where I was.
Excellent.
I can find it fast enough. So I think that
That's
was an
cool, man.
influence
That's awesome.
too. And Hitchhiker's always a favorite. That probably shaped it somehow.
Mhm. So do you tend to gravitate toward that very dry English or British kind of comedy, because
I think at
something I
times,
very.
yeah, it's just strange me not being British at all. But
Mhm.
I think I do like the British style comedy in books.
Josh, do you have a question, boss?
I did not. No, I think that's fascinating, man. I'd love to read your book and see. It sounds so unique, and the meshing of it sounds like there's the music files and technology, but in this Tolkienian fantasy world, it sounds like a really neat mashup. I'm
No,
really
thanks. Yeah,
excited to read it.
yeah, it's very much available. It's on if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's on there.
Kindle Unlimited. Okay. Where else
Great.
would people be able to find your how many books do you have, and do you have a website? What's your how do
As
people-
I've said in other interviews, I do need to actually set up my website. I have right now 2 books.
Okay, nice.
This one and the other one, which I don't have a hard copy of right now, but it's called The Shouting Professor.
Okay,
And they are kind of very strangely linked.
interesting.
I didn't plan on them even. I had no plan on them being linked. They were completely separate stories.
That I can always appreciate. But even especially a sideways reference in different stories like that.
Yeah. I think I just at some point I realized that I don't want to super spoiler, but the planet where the Grumpy Hero takes place,
Mhm.
that same solar system, like the other planet in the solar system, had a lot of influence about what was going on in the Shouting Professor.
Interesting.
There's a lot of stuff. There's stuff moving from galaxy to galaxy in both books.
That sounds like
That's cool.
Yeah, that sounds like a really freaking fun time. All right, so up until that point, that we get you on Kindle Unlimited, and I can assume your website is going to be Ethan Mawyer Mesquire.
Mesquire?
To increase on the lawyer joke that I
Oh, yeah.
tried and bombed at the beginning of the podcast. But
It would just be Ethan Mawyer. I
okay,
have
perfect.
it. I just haven't set it up.
Are you on Instagram or any other social media where people could look up your work and see whether or not you're
Which example did you
progressing on
have?
things? Huh?
Or am I on what?
Any social media. I personally don't have any, but
Yeah, I do. I do Facebook. I'm sporadically on Twitter, where I
Mhm.
occasionally post, realize no one reads it, and then don't post again for a while.
well, you might get a bump from
I'm the
the
same way on Twitter.
yeah, you might get a bump from the few people that listen to the show. So
No, maybe, and then I think last time I was on like a show that aired. I checked out Twitter, saw I was tagged in a post,
there you
and
go.
ended up picking up a couple new followers.
Hey, there you go.
Nice. Well, we'll definitely tag you on Twitter when we post
Thank
this
you.
because I'm on
Yeah.
Twitter. So yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
Absolutely, we'll get Josh into it. So before we wrap up the interview, is there anything that you want to put out there outside of your credentials? Like, is there a thought or a vibe or something that you want to put out to the world that you're?
I'm not like that, like spiritual or anything like that. I don't have like an overarching.
What's your 8th chakra saying? I'm interested what your orgone energy is vibing here. Is there anything you want to tell the reptilian overlords that watch this show in order to monitor what the low level humanity does?
I would like to tell them that I can't guarantee that anything within my books will give them any like clue about what happens, but it's worth a try. It's worth taking a look, see if you can find anything. There may be something in there I didn't even plan on putting in.
That is an excellent recommendation. Okay, so to our reptilian overlords, deep beneath Dulce, New Mexico, or Dulce, New Mexico, I always forget how to pronounce it. Please get Ethan Mawyer's books, and please elevate him up to the highest level echelon that you can. We need more writers with good creative fiction like Ethan Mawyer.
Thank you. I would appreciate that. And I do have one audiobook and another one probably coming out like in the next month, whenever
Excellent.
Audible approves it.
Sounds like a good time. Josh, you have anything else? Anything else?
No, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Ethan. We really
thank you.
appreciate you. This was a great interview.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of your day, man.
Thanks.
Yeah, this has been Nerds with Friends. Thanks so much.
Heck yeah.